We had got away so well and we had taken thousands of German prisoners, so we felt this is it. We are just getting ready now to make the final push, which was going to sweep the Germans before us.
We heard that the Germans had begun to retire on the Hindenburg line. We didn't know how far he was going back, but we were pretty elated to feel that we were going towards victory, and we sensed that we were making at last real progress, and we're very happy to be involved in this part of the war and fulfill the ambitions that we'd had a couple of years ago, really being in it, and that it shouldn't be over by Christmas and deny us our opportunity of a fight.
The Germans had departed, and of course they'd booby-trapped everything. You were not to touch a latrine, you were not a German latrine, you were not warned not to do it, not to pick up any objects in trenches or dugouts until they'd been properly defused or whatever, because he left explosive pens. Somebody had found out he'd booby-trapped a German officer's latrine, and the Germans were expert at booby-trapping.
We were told everything that they could tell us about the German trenches and our own trenches, and that we were told. At night time we went, carried stuff up to the front line, bombs and ammunition, ladders for jumping out of when you advanced. Everything that was possible to be needed in the front line ready for the attack.
On Easter Monday we came out in the dark, early morning, very early morning, and we went from the town and we went out and we went straight into the attack. And after we'd passed the front line, I suppose we'd got about 100 yards in front, and the barrage had opened. Beautiful timing, it opened just as we got the front line. And we were to, that was the creeping barrage, we were to advance 100, they lifted the sights 100 yards every 4 minutes. The thing we had to do was not walk into our own barrage. Just before the barrage opened, a lone machine gun opened. But just then the barrage opened. And of course you couldn't hear any machine gun then. We went on, and we got to our objective with very few casualties. We jumped in the trenches right on top of the Germans, but we had to go on, leave them for the mopping up.
We went up to Arras, and it was bank holiday, April the 9th, 1917. It was bank holiday. We did a show at Arras, and it snowed. So, it was pretty good. We didn't have many casualties. I don't remember what my objective was. I had a platoon objective, which was easy. It was a walkover. My platoon was had quite an easy time. It didn't have many casualties. That was April the 9th.
It was Easter time, Easter Friday and Easter Saturday. They were terrible days of fighting, that sort of thing. And I thought, what a funny time to start an offensive at Easter time. You know, it seemed all wrong to me. And then we were involved. We were marched up to take over from the Middlesex Regiment, who had been knocked about pretty well, and that was when we first saw our first Tommies dead. They were propped up on the side of a little hammock, and they had obviously taken shelter there, and then they must have been shot from the back or somewhere, and they were covered with snow, and we said, oh dear, you know, that's we might be like that one day. It's a bit of it give us a bit of a shiver to see them.
The Canadians were held the ridge, all this side of the ridge, and the Germans were on the other side of the ridge. But to reach the Canadians, we had to use the tunnels through the ridge. Oh, works of art. They were well done, well-made tunnels made by pitmen and that sort of thing. And there was a wagon line in them, a railway line. And we, the signallers, had to go down with an officer, went through the tunnels for miles and miles, and landed at the other side. The tunnels were covered with people, hundreds and hundreds sitting with their backs to the wall, sitting with their backs and their rifles and all held ready to come out.
Whilst I was in Arras itself at that time, the the noise, the sound of the bombardment was terrific. In fact, the intensity, to me, the intensity of the bombardment was greater than anything I'd heard on the Somme. That was my impression of it. It was terrific. The ground was shaking with all this. It was terrible. And of course the Germans, well, they hadn't a chance there because the operation had been well planned and well carried out, and the objectives were achieved.
As we moved forward, we had to thread our way amongst the shell holes. The ridge was a mass of shell holes from the heavy preliminary bombardment. The German trenches were almost obliterated. The first objective was the German main line trench, which was taken quite easily. From then on, we moved to a position just over the crest of the ridge, and when we reached the top of the ridge, a remarkable panorama unfolded itself. We could see all the red brick mining villages around Lens, and in the immediate foreground, the villages of Vimy and Petit Vimy. There was also the elaborate German concrete gun positions, which were ranged on either side of the Lens-Arras road, which ran through there. The Germans held on to some trenches at the bottom of the ridge, and they caused quite a few casualties from rifle fire, from snipers. They also managed to hold on for some time to a position on our left called the Pimple, and they also caused quite a lot of trouble from there.
The weather was heavy with rain and a real snowstorm at times. Late that afternoon, the Canadian troops had reached the crest of the ridge, went on down the other side, and captured lots of German artillery guns and prisoners. Now, the Germans had dug a long tunnel under Vimy Ridge with 4 outlets or stairways by which the soldiers could come and go into their trenches above ground. It had all modern conveniences, electric lights, ventilation, and a large bathroom for the soldiers. There were 3 tiers of beds on each side of the tunnel, and plenty of space to walk and have tables in the middle. When our gun crew went over the top that morning, our objective was to control any movement of troops trying to come up that first opening or stairway from the tunnel below. When we arrived there, we found the entrance had been partially blown in by shell fire from our own artillery. We could see a light at the bottom of the stairway, and we shouted, "Come arouse!" but no answer.